Hello and welcome to this video, which is part of a series of videos that the Children, Youth and Families team are releasing this week because this is Refugee Week. I'm Lucy and today I'm going to be interviewing two amazing young people who are working really hard to raise awareness about refugees. So introducing Bruce and Ella, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Shall we start by hearing a little bit about you both? Ella, do you want to tell us about you?
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm 19 and I'm currently in Peterborough, which is where my family live, but I am a student in London studying international relations and French.
Nice. And Bruce?
I am Bruce. I'm 18 and I've just finished my gap year. And I'm going to be studying international law and globalization at university in September. And I'm currently in Peterborough too.
Nice. And I'm zooming from Gateshead. I didn't say that, did I? I'm in the Northeast. It's so nice to be together and so interesting to hear that you're both studying courses that sound pretty related to the reason we're zooming today, because you have both recently set up an amazing organisation called Youth for Refugees. Will you tell me a little bit about what Youth for Refugees is and does?
Absolutely. So Youth for Refugees is a youth-led initiative to promote youth awareness and involvement in the refugee crisis. We definitely feel that the youth have a massive part to play in international affairs and politics, and we think that young people in particular are being left out of the conversation. So the way we want to tackle that is educate young people, tell them as much as we can about the refugee crisis, help them to raise awareness through petitions and other small level activism like that. And then also for the older young people, we want to promote direct involvement, so volunteering, and we want to support them through that because we know it can seem fairly difficult, but we want to change that stigma surrounding volunteering abroad and make it seem much more accessible.
That's amazing. And I know that you both spend time as older young people working in Calais, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me about the situation in Calais and maybe how that relates to what you decided to set up with Youth for Refugees?
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment in Calais, there's just under, I think around 500 to 1,000 refugees dotted all over. It was once the jungle, but in 2016 it was like disbanded. So now it's just small camps. However, the police go in and there's a number of charities working there at the moment, but police, and they provide donations, but police basically go in and they're allowed to destroy tents and they're trying to move the refugees on. So I last went to Calais in 2017 and I have a picture of when we were volunteering, and it's like a forest area where people would have their tents set up. And then me and Bruce went again in January, and we went to the exact same site that I went to 2 years before. And the whole forest had been, not the forest, but like the woodland area had been completely cut down. And the tents had been removed in an attempt by the French police to try and move the refugees on. But the issue is, by moving these refugees on, they're just creating more unsafe places for these refugees to be staying in and forcing them to cross the border and cross the channel, which is so unsafe. And I think one of the things that made us really want to set this organisation up was when we went to Calais in January, and we were walking from the ferry terminal to our Airbnb, which at like 3 a.m. So it's quite crazy. We were quite scared because it was so dark, but there was a lorry just parked in a car park. And as we were walking past, there was about 6 or so French police officers, and they were searching under the lorry, like where the wheels were. And we had no clue what was going on, but we were saying that, in all honesty, if we weren't there and if there was maybe a refugee that was hiding under the lorry, what would happen to them? We would have no clue. And as young people, we really, really wanted to do something and get involved with it. Often I think adults underestimate young people and think that we can't really get involved and we can't do much. But we really wanted to change that and challenge that and say, actually, no, we can do stuff and we can get involved. And our voices are sort of something that wanted to be the platform that would bring young voices together about refugees.
That's so exciting and it's so encouraging to all of the young people who will be watching this, who are part of the Methodist Church, to hear that young people can make a difference and that young people's voices count. And I suppose we've seen that in other areas recently, haven't we, with the amazing Greta and climate change, and to see that actually globally young people can make a huge difference to the conversations about what justice looks like. It sounds like your time in Calais was really formative. Did you meet and spend time with people who were refugees and asylum seekers?
Yeah. So we spent a weekend there in January, and the way that the days were structured, we would do some work in the warehouse to organise donations, but then in the afternoon we'd go out on distribution, and going out on distribution meant you'd spend some time giving out donations that people have obviously donated, and you'd also provide some this was the charity that we work with, you'd provide some services for refugees. So when we were there, they had a sewing station to patch up any broken clothing that any of the refugees had, so they had some selection, and they had a barber shop, a makeshift barber shop. People were giving them haircuts. They had people were fixing their bikes, because a lot of refugees have bikes to get around Calais, because obviously they still essentially live there, so they need to get around, and that's their means of transport. And then also there was a tea and coffee stand which we were on, and the tea and coffee, a lot of refugees said that it was the brightest part of their day, which is crazy because we take our tea and coffee in the mornings for granted. We all have a tea in the morning, and we just take it for granted. It's the brightest part of their day, because it's people coming over and truly showing some solidarity with them. Not everyone's against them, and they really feel included. And we actually had a few conversations. One sticks out in my mind. He had a lot of sugar in his tea, because they say that the sugar keeps them warm at night. So Ella put a spoon of sugar in his tea, and he wanted more, and we were just shocked that he just wanted more. We were so shocked at the amount of sugar, and his attitude was so positive. So we spoke to him for a while. We spoke to him about anything in broken English and some French, because we can both speak French. So in a couple of different languages, and we spoke to him about politics, and we said that we would be the future leaders who would change the global opinion about refugees. And he said he was so grateful, but he thought he'd be dead by the time that we got there. And it was so heartbreaking to hear that they're just on survival mode at the moment, because the behaviour of the police is so unpredictable and so violent, and they're just grateful to see it every day when they wake up, and it's just heartbreaking.
Gosh, that is such a moving story, and I can so see why that spurred you into action. Thank you for sharing that with us. I suppose at the moment, there is no one in the world who's not thinking about systemic and institutionalised racism. And I know that Methodist Church is praying that Black lives might matter in a real lived sense. And lots of us are thinking about what we can do to educate ourselves and to take action to make sure that Black lives matter. And I'm really interested whether you think there's any relationship between the racism that we see in our institutions and our systems and the way that we treat refugees and asylum seekers in the UK.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest, because often people don't see the person behind it. So you could have any story that you have. And I myself, I'm mixed race. So before people see me, they see my skin color. And I've always found that that is still an issue in society today. And I think it's anyone that isn't supposedly what you should look like in the systemic racism of looking white, I think there's bias and prejudice against you. So I think refugees are treated so poorly in the UK, and I think we've seen that with the weekly allowance of asylum seekers going up by, I think, £1 or something a week, which is now like
26p a day, something
yeah.
like that.
And it's just like, how can people can't survive on that? It's not possible at all. And I think it's really important. I recently wrote an article about the Black Lives Matter movement. But I think it's so important. Education is so important. And that is the only way that I honestly believe that we can really move forward and actually change things. Because I think in schools, you're never taught about maybe Black history or maybe the refugee crisis or why there is a number of refugee crises across the world. It's always focused on, say, Henry VIII and subjects like that, which, yes, is important because it's our history, but to understand what's happening in our society today, you have to look elsewhere as well. And so I recently wrote that we really need to change the education system and actually teach students and young people what's happening today, because otherwise it's just breeding ignorance in classrooms of, oh, they're different, it doesn't affect us, but then it does. That's what our society is built up of today. So I think it's really important, and it's the refugee crisis and the Black Lives Matter movement is definitely something you can draw parallels between the two, and definitely there needs to be some change made.
Thanks, Ella. That is, I love that you focus on education, and one of Youth for Refugees' aims is to educate young people, isn't it? I wonder if there are any particular places you would point us to if we wanted to learn more about the ongoing refugee crisis.
So it's a shame because...
Sorry, that's my dog. He's just joining in.
It's a shame because information on the crisis is so hard to come by. Well, it seems hard to come by because the media coverage of the issue is so poor. So what we do is we've honed down our Instagram following, because there are so many pages on Instagram that we've been opened up to. And, Instagram is, we all love a bit of Instagram as young people. So I think following pages on Instagram, you get constant updates on things happening around the globe. And the way to then deal with that information is to digest it, understand it, and do further research, but also share it with your friends, because that's the only way that we think the information is going to get out there if the media don't start to cover the issue more. So we think that, honing down your own following on social media, so it's not just Instagram, but Twitter, every social media you can imagine, and also just doing research. So looking on the United Nations website, looking at blogs, reading books by great thinkers. It's on systemic racism. It really just helps you to understand the issue more, because it is such a complex issue.
Yeah, and I think also what is important is we notice that often the information that is out there is really hard to understand, because we're trying to make it accessible to young people, but how can young people, and I'm not underestimating the capabilities of young people, but often the language and the situations are so hard to wrap your head around. And I struggle sometimes. I'm like, I don't actually understand what you're trying to tell me here. So one thing that we try to do, and that we do on our Instagram, is every Sunday we do like a news update of things that are happening across the world that concern refugees. We try and like put it down into vocabulary that people can understand, or just snippets. Hold on. Right. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, carry on. The realities of a Zoom call. You've got a letter, I've got a dog.
This is my Depop buys at like 2 a.m. Yeah, so what we've tried to do, and that we've tried to really focus on, is trying to make it accessible to young people in bites that they can understand in just maybe one Instagram story, just so you can get like the snappy, quick bits of information. So I think that's definitely that young people could try and do, is maybe look at our social media. I'm sure there's other organizations as well that are trying to make it constantly accessible to young people for them to understand.
Amazing. So if I'm going to go away and follow you on Instagram, what am I looking for?
So on Instagram, it's at Youth for Refugees UK. On Twitter, it's at Youth for Refugees, but we had to use one R, so it's at Youth for Refugees, just the one R.
Yeah.
And we're on LinkedIn too for any networking purposes, and then our website is youthforrefugees.org.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I know that you're running a campaign for this week, for Refugee Week. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And if there were one thing that we might take away today and do, what would that be?
So our campaign that we're running for Refugee Week is #SafeSpace2020. And it's a really simple campaign, because obviously we are a fresh organisation. So we wanted to keep it fairly simple, but it's also good that it's simple because it makes it easy for young people to get themselves involved. So basically what it entails is people can email us their photos of them in their safe space, holding up a heart like that in solidarity with refugees, and we're going to collate all of those photos into a collage to make quite a poignant image of all of these people who have a safe space in solidarity with the people who don't. And we really want to raise awareness for the fact that the main issue in the refugee crisis is that people's human rights aren't being respected, and their human right of personal security and safety, it's on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so it's important, and it's not being respected, and ignoring it is being complicit in it. And we think that this would be a really great way to raise awareness for the issue and show how many young people really do care.
Amazing, thank you. It's so good to have something really practical to do, and we'll make sure those links are available alongside this video so that people can find that campaign and join in. Sanella, I think what you are doing is so important. It's so great to hear that young people have a voice, that they can use their voice to really affect change. And as you go forward and Youth Refugee starts to blossom, I wish you all the best with that. I think you're going to go on to amazing things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.